If you're interested in getting a Cruzer, there's plenty of different styles to choose from. From the big longboards to short little banana boards, they all have different characteristics that make them the best for specific styles of skateboarding. The one thing they all have in common though are soft wheels. That makes them great for transportation no matter how rough the ground is. This is pretty smooth actually. If you're trying to skate from one spot to another and it's more than a few blocks, there's a good chance the terrain's going to change along the way. Whether it's rough streets or smooth, sidewalks with cracks, bricks, or even hard-packed dirt, soft wheels can roll right over it, including these things. The softness also absorbs a lot of the rolling vibrations, making your board roll more quietly and feel more comfy underneath your feet. All of which allows you to push less and just ride along and cruise. That's why they call them Cruzers. This is the Santa Cruz 80's Cruzer. It's called an 80's Cruzer because the deck shape is similar to what boards were shaped like in the 80's. It also has 80's style slime balls wheels. Slime balls in Santa Cruz, very 80's brands. Santa Cruz Skateboards has been around since 1973 and was one of the biggest brands throughout the 80's. So they know a thing or two about 80's shapes like this. More bumps. 80's deck shapes tend to have big wide tails, tapered noses, and wheelbases around 15 inches long. The tails kick up quite a bit, and they have the perfect amount of concave to hold your feet in place. 80's deck shapes are easy to ride, so they're perfect for beginners, and since they have the right balance between overall length, wheelbase, and tail length, they're great for tricks too. They are widest at the places where your feet will be if you're in this classic sideways skate stance. So many tricks are done in this stance or begin there with some minor adjustments. For example, if you were going to do an Ollie, you just move your toes towards the middle of the board and your front foot slightly back. Tell you what, as a little bonus, I'm going to put a little trick tip at the end of this video on how to do an Ollie. Since skateboarding grew and evolved so much during the 80's, these are the type of decks that so many of the modern day tricks were invented on. Sometimes they're called directional shapes because one end is meant to be the front and the other end is supposed to be the back. Doesn't that look like the front? Directional. Definitely not symmetrical. Sometimes decks this shape are called reissues because they're replicas of the original 80's Pro decks. I don't recognize this particular shape as a reissue of any classic Pro deck, but it does have some of the similarities to some of the classic Grosso and Kendall shapes from the past. 80's shapes tend to match up well and look cool with big colorful wheels. Speaking of wheels, the wheels on this classic 80's Cruzer are 60mm 78A slime balls. They fit the 80's style deck perfectly, not only because they're the right size, but they also have that 80's look, and Slime Balls is a brand from the 80's as well. 60mm is a fairly large wheel size, but not overly huge. Ideal for an 80's style Cruzer. Any bigger and tricks wouldn't be quite as easy. Any smaller and they wouldn't match this style of deck. They are 78A. 78A is the durometer number for wheel hardness. Hard wheels skate best on smooth surfaces and soft wheels roll fast on any ground. The hardest wheels you can get are around 101A, and these 78As are around the softest. That makes them great for cruising over the roughest surfaces. It also gives you less trouble from hazards like sidewalk cracks and pebbles. Cruzer wheels make it easy to go fast without having to push a bunch. You can just push and cruise. Soft wheels like 78A are harder to slide than hard wheels, but they'll still slide with some effort. That's the biggest trade-off when deciding between hard skate park wheels and soft cruiser wheels. Soft wheels roll fast on rough ground as well as smooth, whereas hard wheels slide a lot easier. As far as the other components go, the classic 80's Cruzer also comes with crux trucks and ABEC 3 bearings. Slime Balls makes excellent cruising wheels. The Crux K5s turn nice and smooth and grind really well too. All the parts on them are super legit, and these are the trucks and wheels I'd put on a Cruzer if I was making a Cruzer from scratch. Personally, I thought the bearings it comes with feel great and roll super fast with the Slime Ball 78As. My favorite thing about the 80's Cruzer is that you can do pretty much most tricks on it. It works for flip tricks and is great at the skate park, as well as on ramps, manuals, flat bars, maybe not flat bars, depends on what trick you're doing. Sometimes wheels like this are hard to do crooked grinds and tail slides, but it happens. I've seen people do it, so it's possible. So if you're looking to get somewhere fast and easy, it's great for transportation, but if you want to stop and skate a spot along the way, or maybe do some tricks, it won't hold you back. If you're looking to learn how to Ollie, it's got a nice long tail and it Ollie's great. If you're looking for a different style Cruzer or a longboard, be sure to check out the other Santa Cruz Cruzers. Some Cruzers, like the pintails and drop-throughs, are longer and designed for more stability at high speeds. And some, like the Sharks, are shorter and are for quick turns and compact storage. If you're not sure what kind of Cruzer to get, or if you even want a Cruzer, be sure to check out the full Santa Cruz line at nhsfunfactory.com. If you have any questions, just hit us up. You can leave a comment here or hit us up in the chat box on nhsfunfactory.com. We'll get back to you, let you know how we can help you out, even if you're a beginner or you don't know what you're looking for. The classic 80's Cruzer, a great reason to go skateboarding. Move your front foot towards the middle of the board. If you're going to do a little Ollie, you don't need to move it too far back. But if you really want to sprack that thing, I'd put it right in between the wheels. Put the back foot on the tip of the tail with your toes in the middle, not off to one side of the tail. Of course, the closer you put your feet together and the more you're on your toes, the harder it is to balance. That's why it takes practice and is so impressive when someone can Ollie really high on flat ground. It might be easier to learn how to Ollie with your board on a surface that will hold it in place, like on carpet. Now crouch down and get your balance. Being able to keep your balance while lowering all the way down to the point of where you hit your tail and jump is a huge part of learning how to Ollie comfortably. You can see me wobbling just trying to hold still between the crouch and jump. As you begin to jump straight up, hit the tail on the ground while lifting the front foot up so that the tail makes that pop noise. This makes the front end of the deck lift up and become so steep that you're using the side of your front foot to control the board. As the front end lifts higher, you can slide your front foot forward up to where the front bolts are and where the nose tilts up. Since the board doesn't go completely vertical, you can slightly roll your foot in the air. As you can see, I start rolling it before the tail even hits the ground. Be sure just to roll it in that initial liftoff and make sure to flatten it back out so you don't land back on the ground with a rolled ankle and get hurt. This helps you learn how to control the board with the side of your foot. Sliding your front foot forward and getting the side of your shoe under the nose allows you to keep pulling the board up into the air with your initial jump. Getting a good pop is important, but it's that feeling of pulling your nose up with the side of your front foot that makes it so people can Ollie so high. It's also how people hold Ollies on transition so well. It's important not to let your front foot go too far and slip off the end. Then you lose control of the board and you can roll your ankle that way. After you've pulled the board up into the air, you can push the front end forward. That motion now causes the back end of the board to lift up and everything should be off the ground. If timed right, the board should be flattened out and horizontal with the ground while you're still in the air. Try and get your feet back into place at that high point and on the way back down, so when you land, your feet will be in that sideways stance or hopefully over the bolts. After some practice, you can move on to rolling ollies, and once you can do those, it's like opening a new level to your skateboarding world. Thanks everyone for watching, and thank you skateboarding.